Okay, so we are in the 9th chapter. Almost we come to the 50% of Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so let us pay obeisance to Sri Radha Radha Govinda. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapada Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vittam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakana Vittamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dino Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatrabhyascha Kripa Sindhave Vacha Patitam Nam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Deshatarine Jayo Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So let us begin. So what we did in chapter 8, last thing we saw how to remember Krishna at the time of death. So there was so many questions by Archana. Then it was almost technically, that is Adi Daiva, Adi Bhuta, what is Adi Atma, and where does Adi Agna resides and all that. And finally, he asked how to remember him at the final hour. So Krishna says that whoever remembers me at the final hour will surely attain my nature. They'll come to my abode. But how to remember him? We have to do by Abhyasa, Yogena Abhyasa, only by practicing remembrance, either through meditation or through bhakti. So then he says how, then he inspires us to giving us the comparison between the material world and the superior world. He says how it is full of bliss and there's no birth and death in the spiritual world and everything is blissful, Abhyaktam. And whereas material world is temporary and it is full of miseries. And you are subjected to repeated birth and death. And it is. So then he says by supremacy that bhakti only you can attain. And by Krishna consciousness, you will get all the benefits of sacrifice, change, in Vedic education, rituals. So all that you need not have to do just by being in Krishna consciousness, it's the supreme. You attain all the benefits, Vedeshu, Sarveshu. So now, in this chapter, so Krishna explained that unalloyed devotee surpasses the path of light. Now he'll explain how to become such a devotee in this chapter. So this chapter 7 to 12 is all about bhakti. Okay, so supremacy of bhakti. Transfers the best form of yoga. Chapter implies the specific knowledge required for performing this most confidential yoga. Yoga means connecting to the Lord, right? Actually, from chapter 7 and 9, it looks identical because chapter can be seen, I think, between Krishna and clearing up some important points before continuing on in the same place. So what we're going to see in chapter 9 is, it's the most confidential. Why most confidential? Because we are trying to go back to the Lord. How to go back to the Lord? You don't find such things in any of the other type of literatures or scriptures. Here, this is the most context. How to go back to him? What is bhakti is all about? We understand bhakti, but how to do the worship and how to go back to it? Yes. So here it starts off with saying the qualifications and disqualifications. That is hearing about Krishna. Starts off with hearing. That should see. Krishna keeps repeating about this, hearing. So transcendent knowledge can be only understood by hearing it from the devotees, not by our own level. Then it talks about the Aishwarya Jnana. That is the Krishna's Achinta Veda relationship with the material world. Then who are the non-worshippers and the worshippers? Krishna is the supreme object of worship and the glories of bhakti, directly worshipping Krishna. What's the benefit? So this is how it is being organized, this chapter. So 9.3, first 3 verses is about hearing about Krishna, and 9.42 is about Aishwarya Jnana, and 11 to 15 non-worshippers and worshippers, different kinds of worshippers, and he is the supreme. And glories of directly worship is seen. Okay. So what does it in this? Here 9.1 to 3, it talks about non-enviness. Unless if we are envious of the Lord, then we cannot understand this transcendental knowledge. Only if you are non-envious, then one can hear this confidential knowledge about Krishna. And faithlessness. So these 2 qualities he explains. You should have faith. Only if you have faith in this, you can. Otherwise, you are forced to birth and death. So if you don't have faith in this, then you are subjected to birth and death. So these 2 points, envy and faith. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha, idam tu te guhyatamam pravakshami anasyorave. Anasyorave means envy. Jnanam vijnanam sahitam ejnatva mokshasi subhat. Supreme Lord said, my dear Arjuna, because you are never envious of me, I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved of the miseries of material existence. See, even in chapter 4, he told that you're my friend and a devotee of me. So because you're a devotee of me, I think I'm giving you this, telling you about this transcendental knowledge. So here again, Krishna says, Arjuna, you are never envious of me. So envious means like, not jealous, but we don't like what the other person has. And we want that, and it should be that we should be having it and not that person. So that is envious. So I shall impart to you this most secret wisdom, knowing which you shall be relieved by the miseries of material existence. So what is the benefit of understanding this Raja Vidya is we will be relieved from the miseries of material existence. So we have to be devotee as well as we should be non-envious. We are sure, otherwise we'll never understand this wisdom. So Nanam Vijnana Sahitam Mokshasi Ashvat. Because then we will be relieved from the miseries of material existence. Okay, let us see the purport is very nice.
Hare Krishna Mataji, may I?
Yes, Mataji.
Purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As a devotee hears more and more about the Supreme Lord, he becomes enlightened. This hearing process is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are full of potencies, and these potencies can be realized if topics regarding the Supreme Godhead are discussed among us devotees. This cannot be achieved by the association of mental speculators or academic scholars, for it is realized knowledge. The devotees are constantly engaged in the Supreme Lord's service. The Lord understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in Krishna consciousness and gives him the intelligence to understand the signs of Krishna in the association of devotees. Discussion of Krishna is very potent, and if a fortunate person has such association and tries to assimilate the knowledge, then he will surely make advancement towards spiritual realization. Lord Krishna, in order to encourage Arjuna to higher and higher elevation in his potent service, describes in this 9th chapter matters more confidential than any he has already disclosed. The
Thank
very
you,
big.
Mataji. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you,
So
Mataji.
here,
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here, Krishna says that the devotees are constantly engaged in things. Then he understands the mentality and sincerity of a particular living entity who is engaged in consciousness and gives him the intelligence. So unless we are sincere and we are engaged in this spiritual path, then when he knows our sincerity and the thing, then he gives the intelligence to understand this science, and that too in the association of devotees. So if you want to advance in spiritual realization, then we need to have association of devotees and we should be sincere. And here Krishna is, why is giving more and more explanation and details thing is because he wants to encourage Arjuna to higher an elevation in this service. So, and the confidential first thing he started off in chapter 2, saying we are the soul and not the body. That's the first thing. Then in chapter 7, he said that we are part and parcel of, because we also are having superior energy. But because we have come to this material world, we got conditioned, isn't it? So the very beginning of the chapter, the first chapter, is more or less an introduction to the rest of the book, because that gives the lamentation. So what was the lamentation by Arjuna? So this is what we are. We are conditioned in this material world, and we are stuck in this, and we have our own miseries and happiness. We are stuck there. So lamentation. And it is for that we are getting the answers here. So the second and third chapters, the spiritual knowledge described is called confidential. We saw the karma yoga. We saw that we are the soul and not the body, and how to be free from the sinful reactions from the activities, karma yoga, fruitive activities. So that was described, and so that was the thing. And this is the about the soul and the sinful reactions. No other book will give us. Then discussed in 7th and 8th, especially related to devotional service, because they bring enlightenment in Krishna consciousness. They are called more confidential. But the matters which are described in 9th chapter deal with unalloyed pure devotion. Therefore, it is called the most confidential. Why this unalloyed devotion, and what it helps us? It helps us to go back to the spiritual abode. That's what it's all about. How to become a pure devotee. So one who is situated in this most confidential knowledge of Krishna is naturally transcendental. He need not be in the spiritual world. Even being in the material world, he'll always be in the transcendental plane. Okay. So here in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is said that one who has a sincere desire to render loving service to the Lord is situated in the conditioned state of material. He is said to be considered liberated. Though he is supposed to be in the material world, he is considered liberated because he has the sincere desire to render loving service to the Lord. That means he has already gone to the higher level of consciousness. So that is why we shall find in 10th chapter that anyone who is engaged in that way is a liberated person. Okay. And here, this knowledge referred to pure devotional service, which consists of 9 different activities. See, when we say devotional service, actually, bhakti, this is how Prabhupada explains it as devotional service. And what does the devotional service activities involve? It involves hearing, shravanam, kirtanam, smaranam, remembering, then serving, vandanam, worshipping him, and praying, obeying, maintaining friendship, sakhyam, and then atma nivedana. So by practice of these 9 elements of devotions, one is elevated to spiritual consciousness. So, but starting these 3 is very important for us. We are the beginners. So, Shravanam, Kirtanam, and Smaranam. So, we start off with the hearing the scriptures, hearing about the Lord, hearing his pastimes, hearing in this, and then chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, taking his names, chanting all the time, and doing the Kirtana and Smaranam, remembering. So these are the things which we can practice. So when one's heart is thus cleared of contamination, material contamination, then he can understand these signs of Krishna. So Prabhupada very clearly writes here, when one's anarthas are all reduced by being this, we can understand these signs of Krishna. Simply to understand that a living material entity is not material is not sufficient. Just knowing that we are the soul and not the body is not enough. We should know how to go back to the spiritual abode. So, but this may be the beginning of spiritual realization, but we should recognize the difference between activities of the body and the spiritual activities of one who understands that is not the body. So that means we have a duty for because we have this body, to maintain this body, and we have to use this body to progress in the spiritual life, right? And we should know what the spiritual activities are also there. So that is for the soul, activities for the soul and activities for the body. So here very clearly Prabhupada writes in this purpose. Okay, and then that's all. And then he finally concludes again Sanskrit Anushuve is very significant, because all are highly scholarly, means they are very much speculative. They try to play with the words, they play with the things, and we try to give their own interpretations because they are envious of Krishna. Even the most erudite scholars write on Bhagavad Gita very inaccurately. Because they are envious of Krishna, their commentaries are useless. So we have to listen from the devotees of the Lord. Only then he will be able to give the knowledge. So these chapters are very beneficial. So we understand here for spiritual life, and why we need to understand this knowledge, because then we'll be relieved from the miseries of material existence. So understood. The first qualification is we should not be envious of the Lord. Okay, so that's what here is given here. Confidential, we saw that the spiritual, where the knowledge of soul and the body is useful for liberation. Then knowledge which brings about enlightenment of Krishna consciousness. That is, we learn more about the greatness of the Lord and his energies. Then we come to know we are part and parcel of him, but we have forgotten our relationship with the Lord. And we are under the control of material energy. So then chapter 9, because it deals with pure and deals the glories of the Lord. So the qualification is we should be non-envious. Okay. What is the qualification? We should be free from envy. What is the means to receive? By proper hearing, and that to hear from the devotees. Then we will be relieved from the miseries of material. That's why it's known as Raja Vidya, king of education. Okay. And these are the things which I said, no? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Pada Sevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dashyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedam. So let us focus on the first 3 activities for us. That is, there the examples are given, like Shukadev Goswami is on Kirtan all the time talking about the Lord. And Prahlad Maharaj, we know, he's all the time Smarana, because wherever he was, whatever his father put him into, but he was always meditating on the Lord. Pada Sevanam is our goddess Lakshmi. So she has the wealth and this, she's all the time serving the Lord's lotus feet. Archanam, that is deity worship. Vandanam is Akura, praying. Dashyam is like Hanuman. Sakyam is like, example is Arjuna. Atmanivedan is Bali Maharaj. So these are the 9 processes of devotional service which we can take up, engage in these spiritual activities. Okay. So then Krishna continues to say, Raja Vidyam Raja Guhyam Pavitram Idam Uttamam Pratyakshavagamam Dharmyam Susukam Kartum Avyayam. Raja Vidyam is the king. This knowledge is the king of education. Is the king of it. It's not like the mundane education we get from the academic schools, universities which we have. But they are only the skills to get a job, how to maintain his body and this. But this knowledge we are getting is the king of it. Because once you know this, you don't have to know anything else, because this helps us to go back to the spiritual life. And it's the Raja Guhyam is the most confidential, most secret of all secrets. It is the purest knowledge, Pavitram, because it's pure. There's nothing, no contamination. Vedam is this, Uttamam is the topmost, is the most perfect. And it gives Pratyaksha, it gives the experiential knowledge. It's not something like experimenting at it. We realize it, self-realization. And it's, only when you start doing the chanting, when you start doing the Shravan and hearing, then slowly you'll find lightness. Only that will come by experience, that by realization by self. It is like if you're hungry and you want to eat, I can't eat for you, isn't it? You have to eat. Only then you will know that your hunger is satisfied. Same way, that's the experience you get. Same way with this knowledge is self-realization, only by perception, pratyaksha sagam, experience. And it is the perfection of religion, dharma. And it is everlasting, avyayam. It's something, it is not you learn this and you don't need it tomorrow. No, it is everlasting and it's joyfully performed, because we are worshipping the Lord, which is always, that is, it's always bliss. Okay, Sachitananda. And joyfully, so Sukham Kart. So how the mother, when she does everything for the child, the more and more she does, more and more she's happy. Isn't the love is gonna, she'll be happy. Just like that, our relationship with the Lord, the more and more we are performing our spiritual activities, the more and more we'll be joyful. So it is joyfully performed. So Sukham Kart. So that's what the Lord says here, Raja Vidya, Raja Guhyam, Pavitram Yuddham, Uttamam, Pratyaksha Gamam, Dharmyam, Susukam, Kartam, Avyayam. Okay, so the knowledge which is giving us is the most confidential knowledge, and it will relieve us from the material miseries, right? King of all knowledge, because it's essence of all doctrines and philosophies explained before. Okay, and it is most confidential. This talks about eternal activities of the soul, and thus gives us the positive information, because this is what we need to understand, not the activities for the body. We need to know about the soul, right? How to go back to him. And further, is purifying the potencies of devotional service is very strong. So why he says is pavitram, why it is purifying is, all of us are in avidya, right? Because of that ignorance, we do some sinful acts, and starts off with a sinful desire, okay? And then we do, because of a sinful desires, we'll end up doing sinful actions. And what happens? We get some reactions. That is known as prarabdha reactions. And they might be manifested or it might not be manifested. So if it is manifested, then it is known as prarabdha karma. Otherwise, it's aprarabdha. So it is still in the whole thing. And because of that, so it's part of it. Like now, in this life, we will be taking care, prarabdha karma. We will be executing that. Okay. But there may be some unmanifested reactions still in our bank, from all our past karmas. It will be there. That is known as aprarabdha, unmanifested reactions. And because of that, we'll still have the kutam, that is our desire, our tendency to do the sinful acts will still be there lingering in our heart. Okay, that is known as kutam. Because of that lingering, we'll be still tendency to do the sinful act continues. Okay. So this is a cycle. Only part of it gets manifested and we get cleared. But still there will be some more in our bank which we have to, like a quantum, it will be there and it will be there and it will again take. So we might have to take many births to clear up all our reactions. Okay, and aprapta karma. But if you take the devotional service, then what happens? It purifies us with all the, even the aprapta karma. Otherwise, what happens? Even if you do what do you call prashchit, you may not only be clearing up the prarabdha karma, but you may not be clearing up this, which is there still in our balance. Okay, but Prabhupada here, this devotional service is so purifying potency it has. It's very strong. It takes care of all the aprapta, unmanifested reactions too. That's why it's purest form. Sinful reaction has 4 stages. Like the growth of a tree from a seed has different stages. Same way, the sinful reactions, as these are the 4 stages, right? And implies that all 4 stages can be purified by devotional service. That's why it's pavitra. And it is beyond tamas. Okay. So this is how it has been explained. So this is why if you take the devotional service, then all this bija, the kutam and all that will be. So how to get direct perception of the self? By practicing devotional service in the association of advance. So we looked at pavitram, how it is pavitram, how it is uttamam, and then now we are saying how we get the direct perception, because when you practice it in the association of devotees, then you can get, like the chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra without talking. One feels transient pleasure and gets purified quickly. Also, if one helps in the mission, one makes spiritual progress. So this is how you can get. And for this, what is the qualification? Advancement is irrespective of previous education or qualification. Anyone can take to Krishna consciousness. It doesn't matter what your past thing, what are the burden we have, and what are the state we have done. Nothing doesn't matter. So irrespective of previous education, I think we can take to Krishna consciousness. Because this devotional service itself will purify. That's how these EPs become happy persons. And further glorification of this knowledge is perfection of religion, and it is blissful, eternally everlasting. It's not that once you leave this body and take another body, that all what you have done in the spiritual thing is lost. No, that continues. Only the material benefits of progress will be lost and you have to start right there. But your spiritual advancement will continue. It will never be lost. It's always there with us. So those who are not, and then now one qualification we saw NB, and we understood what is this king of education is. Now Krishna says those who are not faithful on the path of devotional service cannot attain, O conqueror of foes, but return to birth and death in this life. So we should be faithful. We should be sincere. And only then Krishna will give us the intelligence to get the understanding of this science. Otherwise, we won't be able to understand. And what happens? Then we will be still stuck in this birth and death cycle in the material world. Okay? And it cannot weightlessness is the most important factor for progress in Krishna consciousness, Shraddha. Okay? Simply by serving Krishna, one can achieve all perfection. That's what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. If you water the roots of the tree, then water spreads to all the branches and leaves, right? How do you get this? Shraddha, how does it get strengthened? By sadhu sangha, by association of devotees. And then in the purport, Prabhupada writes about 3 kinds of levels of faith. Some won't have good, they may not have that much of faith, nor do they have knowledge of scriptures. They'll easily fall down and though they are engaged in devotional service. They cannot achieve highest perfection coming to them. And this is the lowest stage. That is the beginning stage where we still have it to strengthen our faith, and they may not have enough knowledge. And the second level is they have faith, but they are not advanced in devotional scriptures. They are simply trying to follow by association and simplicity. So that is the second level. So that second level is that your faith is firm. So that is enough, because then you by association and then you can slowly advance. Okay, and simplicity. Whereas if you don't have faith and you don't have much knowledge and think, there is a risk of falling down. That's what Prabhupada writes about the 3 levels of faith. And firm faith and well versed in devotion service, scriptures, and no chance of falling. So they are the highest. So these are the 3 levels of people who are there depending on the level of faith they have. Okay. So development of that faith is the process of Krishna consciousness. So when we say Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, these are the activities once you start taking, then our faith starts getting strengthened. That is, Shraddha gets the firm faith with Dev by simply trying to follow. Okay. So now Krishna, so we talked about envy, then non-enviousness, then we talked about faithlessness. Now Krishna is talking about his Aishwarya knowledge. That thing. He pervades, creates, annihilates the entire cosmos through his material energy. Although Krishna is a supreme director, the material world nevertheless moves independently, and Krishna thus remains neutral and detached. So now Krishna is talking about the glory. See, we have to understand, unless we understand the Lord and his glories, we won't take to devotion service, isn't it? So he continues to say, Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matsani sarva bhutani na chaham teshu havastita. By me, in my manifested form, the entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So it does not, that means he's there, but he's there as in the energy form. He's controlling the energy and everything. This whole universe is manifest. Okay? And he's pervading everywhere. And is everyone has the Paramatma, and is also in the Golika. And yet everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, I am everywhere. Still myself is the very source. Like the mighty wind blowing everywhere, always rest in ethereal space. Know that the same manner all beings rest in. See, the wind will be blowing the whole thing, but it doesn't go beyond the atmosphere, isn't it? So it is always within that. Same way here it says, all beings rest in me. This means the thing. So now we have to understand about the Lord. So living entities do not rest out. Yoga Aishwarya. So his mystic powers are inconceivable. His mystic opulences, right? And then everything that is created does not rest in me. Although everything rests in me, still is alope and not. So it's like, he's not holding on to it. No, he just by his glance he can create, and he's aloof. Examples of interest. Of everything eternally lasting, right? O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all material manifestations enter into my nature. At the beginning of another millennium, by my potency, I create them. So about the annihilation, he talks about the annihilation. Once it's annihilated, what happens? It goes back into the womb of the Mahavishnu. We learned about the Mahatattva, no? Where there's a plenary expansions like Karnadaksha Vishnu, then Garbhodaksha Vishnu, and Shirodaksha Vishnu. So once it's annihilated, then everything goes back into the womb of the Karnadaksha Vishnu. So all comes under me. My will, it is manifested again and again, and by my will annihilated at the end. O Dhananjaya, all this work cannot bind me. I am ever detached, seated as the neutral. So he is not affected by the material energy. He is controlling the thing, and the material world, the energy doesn't control it, because he controls it. So this is what we understand. Relationship with creation and destruction is the material. It's an inferior energy, isn't it? So he's talked about his relation about the destruction. So the modern concept now, the Big Bang theory and all that, which is now Krishna is refuting it. He is the one who is creating and he is the one who is maintaining and he is the annihilator. So there's no question of Big Bang. So modern concept, they say, no, we evaluate and we come from the monkeys and all that. Then if monkeys we have come out, then the monkeys should not remember, isn't it? Remain there, isn't it? All of them should have become human beings. So there's nothing like that evolution from one to another beginning from creation. So all species of life are created immediately along with the universe at the beginning of the creation itself. So as soon as the Krishna's will, then when he starts creating, the living entities also come along with it. Thus, those who are decide to be in this material world, they're there in the womb of the Lord. So they come, and not one after another, based on desires and past deeds of living entities. Is maintained if Krishna is Parmeshwara, is supreme, is always present. So he is always maintaining. But there's no direct involvement of the Lord, because he does not have, he has put all people around there to take care, administer. Right? Like the king can he not be everywhere, isn't it? And what is the basis of creation? So everything is definitely under the supreme will of the Lord, because he enters as three Vishnu forms and the Bhata. We saw that. Material nature acts by Lord's desire, which implies Krishna has no direct involvement but acts through the material nature. Creation takes place to accommodate inclinations of the desires of the various living entities. So you might understand why he is telling, because unless we understand this relationship, why we are this spiritual and why we should worship him, that's what here Krishna is talking about. So this we have talked about now, Mahatattva, is the Karnadaksha Vishnu. So when he is willing to create, then through his force, all these golden globes come out, okay? And we are in this cosmic, one of the globe, we are in that. And here into each globe, he expands as Garbhodakshina Vishnu. And then he enters it and energizes it. Unless superior energy comes only, it gets analyzed. Then from him, navel, he creates the first Jiva, that is the Brahma, Lord Brahma. Then he is given the thing to create the other things, okay? And he is given the blueprint, what to do. So all the living entities who are there and who have to be in this cosmic thing, they come and reside there, okay? And he creates all these 14 lokas, okay? And then they all come into the respective lokas, okay? And then he expands as Kshirodakshina Vishnu and enters into each of the non-moving and moving entities, living entities, okay? Because he is like a Paramatma in each living entity. The soul, the living entity goes there, and then he's given that, okay? This is the Mahatattva. So we have the 14 lokas. Svargaloka, Bhuloka, Bhuvaloka, Svargaloka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Satyaloka, Vella. Lord above. Then we have Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, and things. And below that we have the hellish planets. And once, when the annihilation takes place, what happens? When the end of the Brahma's day, when he go the night, Brahma's night, then everything goes back into the Vishnu's womb. And when the day comes from the Brahma, again they all come out. Okay. And again, when Mahapralaya takes place, the whole thing, cosmic, all the things get into the Mahavishnus. So that's what here Krishna is saying. So this material nature is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, and it is producing the moving and unmoving beings. By its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. Maya Daksha Prakrit Sujata Chap. So he says, he is creating everything. Okay. So then, how do the people worship him? That's what now. So he talked about his greatness, and he talked about that how this knowledge is only if you are non-envious and if you have faith, then only you can understand this science. Okay. Now he's talking about the worshippers. Fools who think Krishna is an ordinary human being possessing a temporary form become atheists and are defeated in their endeavors. Then it talks about the qualification of a Mahat. Avagnati mamuda manushim tanu ashritam param bhavam adnatu. Mama bhota mahesh. Fools deride me when I designed in the human form. They do not know my transcendent nature and my supreme dominion over all that. So when he explained all that about his transcendental knowledge, which we will not know about his greatness, how he's creating, how he's annihilating and all that, he says, and though he came as Krishna in Vrindavan, no one could understand. Not all of them understood him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They said the fools deride me and I designed the human form. They think that I have the material form, but his form is so transcendental form he had. Otherwise, how as a baby itself he could kill so many demons and various things, and he did super human activities while he was in Vrindavan. So because he was transcendental, but fools don't understand. And my superior dominant over all that. So only few could understand him, but are not all. So he says, and why they can't understand him? It is, in truth, leads to liberation. That's what we saw in 4th chapter. Ignorance of Lord Krishna will be continuing in this cycle of birth and death. Okay? Avagnati. And there are people who misunderstand. See, one is you can be ignorant, don't know anything, fine. But then you'll be in continuity. But there are people who give their own explanation. Misunderstanding of Krishna will lead to increased bondage. That is still worse. And you will still have greater sufferings. That's like the atheist and Mayavatis. So this is the thing he's talking here. And why those who are thus bewildered are attracted by the demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded direction, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So he says, for them, what is the end? They are still stuck in this life, birth and death. There's no liberation for them. Okay? So fools who deride me, who think he's just an ordinary person, they defeated. So fate of those who are out of agreement is like they are attracted by the demonistic views. So hopes for liberation is defeated. Fine. Now he's talking about, we talked about Duratma, now he's talking about the Mahatmas. Mahatmanas are what? Mahatmanas tu Mampata. Because now in this chapter he's talking about the pure devotee, how to become a pure devotee, isn't it? So he says Mahatmas tu Mampata Daivim Prakriti Ashrit. So they are under the protection of the divine nature. Daivim Prakritim Ashrit. And what do? Bhajanti Ananya Manaso Natva Bhutadam Avyayam. So they are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. So because they know him, the thing, and they engage in devotional service, they are under my protection. So he says they are under the protection of the divine nature. So we Mahatmas are already, they are in their thing because they all the time, they are fully, firmly faith in the Lord and engage in devotional service. And what do? Satatam kirtyanto mam etascha dridda vrata, with determination. Namasyanti chamam bhaktya nitya yukta vasati. Always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me, these great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. So this is the highest level, the Mahatmas, who are all the time worshipping him, all the time thinking of him, all the time chanting his glories, and with determination. They have firm faith in them, okay? And they are worship. So they are always under the shelter of the divine nature. Okay? So endearing with great thing going down for these great worship me with devotion. These are the activities of the Mahatmas. Satatam kirtyanto yatansto dridda vrata nitya yukta upasate namasyanti cha mam bhaktya. Others who engage in sacrifice by the cultivation of knowledge worship Supreme Lord as the one without a second, as diverse in many and in the universal. That is, they are the impersonalist, and the one who diverse in many is who think that demigod worshippers. Example, an universal form is they worship the energy, the Virat Rupa. That is Vishwata Mukha. Okay. So we stop with that, and then we take any questions, because we'll go into more into the glories, right?